Antiochus. Antiochus. That's what helps me, is to put little accents. Okay. Okay. Good. Cool. Marcy, break your leg.
Hey there. Welcome to another long-distance worship service. I am Phil Veach.
And I'm Steve Batchelor of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice, where we strive to be a beacon of liberal religion for Florida's Suncoast and a refuge for all who seek a welcoming community, no matter your color, creed, ability, or class, your affectional orientation, gender expression, political affiliation, or religious belief. Here, we celebrate our differences as we learn from another.
If you'd like to know more about this congregation and its many opportunities for learning, growth, and connection, you can peruse our calendar and announcements on Facebook or on our webpage at ucof.org. And please, if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like this video by hitting the thumbs up icon below. Leave us a note in the comments section and click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel.
COVID-19 has hit many nonprofit organizations' budgets hard, and this congregation is no different. Please consider clicking the donate button on our website and give as generously as you can. This continues to be a difficult time for many of us and our neighbors, and we hope you'll find something in this service that speaks to you and maybe lifts you up or challenges you in ways that lead to spiritual reflection and personal growth. We're glad you've chosen to join us. Welcome to church today. The prelude begins our service.
With one further announcement, the second week of each month we designate a cause for a special offering. The month of December is Family Promise. The Open Door Program of Family Promise of South Sarasota County gives families with children who are facing homelessness a chance to get back on their feet by helping them with rent, by helping with initial payments on a rental home, or by paying for a few days of emergency shelter while housing is secured. With your generous donations, you can make sustainable independence a reality for families with children in South Sarasota County. Please click the donate button on the top right of our webpage and use the Donation to Social Justice Charity line. Or you may make checks payable to UUCOV with Family Promise in the memo line. And now a call to worship, a Hasidic prayer translated by Chaim Stern. Things that cannot harm me, and I know it. I yearn for things that cannot help me, and I know it. What I fear is within me, and within me too is what I seek. Let us worship together. Our hymn is O Come, Emmanuel.
O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou dayspring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
Our children have their own religious education class by Zoom each Sunday at 10 a.m. If you'd like to attend or to help your child to attend, login information can be found on our website at UUCOV.org or on our Facebook page. This week, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Kathy Avery, will share a story of how Hanukkah came to be.
Good morning. This is the story of Hanukkah from the PJ Library. A long, long time ago in the land of Israel, the most special place for Jewish people was the temple, or synagogue, in Jerusalem. The temple contained many beautiful objects, including a tall, golden menorah. Unlike menorahs of today, this one had 7 rather than 9 branches. Instead of being lit by candles or light bulbs, this menorah burned oil. Every evening, oil would be poured into the cups that sat on top of the menorah. The temple would be filled with shimmering light. At the time of the Hanukkah story, a mean king named Antiochus ruled over the land of Israel. "I don't like these Jewish people," declared Antiochus. "They are so different from me. I don't celebrate Shabbat or read from the Torah, so why should they?" Antiochus made a new, cruel rules. No more celebrating Shabbat, no more going to the temple, and no more Torah, shouted Antiochus. He told his guards to go into the temple and make a mess. They brought mud, stone, and garbage into the temple. They broke furniture and knocked things down. They smashed the jars of oil that were used to light the menorah. Antiochus and his soldiers made the Jews feel sad and angry. A Jewish man named Judah Maccabee said, "We must stop Antiochus. We must think of ways to make him leave the land of Israel." At first, Judah's followers, called the Maccabees, were afraid. "Judah," they said, "Antiochus has so many soldiers. His soldiers carry such big weapons, and he uses huge elephants to fight his battles. How can we Jews, who don't have weapons, fight against him?" Judah said, "If we think very hard and plan very carefully, we will be able to defeat him." It took a long time, but at the last, Maccabees chased Antiochus and his men out of Israel. As soon as Antiochus and his soldiers were gone, the Jewish people ran to Jerusalem to clean their temple. "What a mess! The beautiful menorah was gone, and the floor was covered with trash, broken furniture, and pieces from the shattered jars of oil. The Maccabees built a new menorah. At first, they worried that they would not be able to light their new menorah, but they searched and searched until at last they found one tiny jar of oil, enough to light the menorah for just one evening. The Maccabees knew that it would be at least 8 days before they could get more oil, but they lit the menorah anyways. To their surprise, this little jar of oil burned for 8 days. The Jewish people could not believe their good fortune. First, their small army had chased away Antiochus' large army, and now the tiny jar of oil had lasted for 8 whole days. The Jewish people prayed and thanked God for these miracles. Every year during Hanukkah, Jews light menorahs for 8 days to remember the miracles that happened long ago.
I invite you into a spirit of prayer and meditation for a few moments. Great Spirit of life, God we know by many names, mystery beyond all our naming. In this season of encroaching darkness, we see the symbols and we hear the stories of many ancient traditions. Some of these symbols and stories might have the power to move us to anger or to tears or to the deeper places of our imaginations. Help us to see the symbols. Help us to listen again to the stories with the eyes and the ears of a child. Help us in this season to welcome all who come as messengers of hope and light and love. We lift up those in this community who face change, challenge, or loss this day as we hold within our hearts all who suffer. And now we pray each in our own ways into the silence. The hopes of this community are offered forth in the names of all those who've gone before and in the names of all those who will come after. In the names of all the helpers of humankind, Shalom, Salam, Amen, and blessed be. The interlude is Sim Shalom, a prayer for peace, composed by Max Janowski and arranged and performed by Dr. Marcel Leonard. This is a story from the Jewish tradition as retold by the Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Charles Ortman. Once there was a man who heard his rabbi teach about lahem hapanim, the show bread which was offered in the Holy Temple each Friday before Shabbat. After discussing the various laws and procedures governing the preparation of this offering and touching on its magical significance, the rabbi bemoaned the fact that because of our sins, we no longer have this ready means to appease God. Well, the man went home and asked his wife if they could prepare 2 special challahs on Friday. He told her that he wished to present these loaves as an offering to God. Hopefully God would consider them an acceptable sacrifice and eat them. So the next Friday afternoon, when no one was likely to be in the shul, the man brought loaves there under his cloak. He prayed and cried out that God should look upon his offering with favor and eat this freshly baked bread. Then he placed the loaves, well wrapped, in the holy ark and quickly left for home. The shamash, caretaker of the shul, arrived later that day to check to see that the Torah scroll was rolled to the appropriate place for the reading the next morning. When he opened up the ark, he was surprised to see 2 fine-looking challah loaves. He had no idea where they'd come from, but he decided to deliver them to some of the poorer members of his congregation. That evening, the man waited impatiently for the end of prayers. When everyone had left the shul, he approached the ark with great trepidation and swung its doors open. The loaves weren't there. He was so happy. He hurried home to tell his wife that God had not disdained the poor efforts of such insignificant people as themselves. Indeed, he had accepted their 2 loaves and eaten them while they were still warm, apparently. The man and his wife decided, each week we must try to give God this pleasure with the same care and devotion that we did this first time. So, every Friday morning, they would faithfully prepare 2 beautiful loaves, and every Friday afternoon, the man delivered them to the shul and earnestly prayed to God for their acceptance. Every Friday, the shamash would come and pick up the bread and deliver it, happy to fulfill the mitzvah of giving unto others. And every Friday night, the man and his wife saw that once again their meager offering had been accepted. So it went for many weeks, for many months. One Friday, the rabbi of the shul stayed much later than usual. He was standing on the bima, the reading platform, reviewing the sermon he planned to give the next day, when, to his surprise, he saw one of his congregants enter carrying 2 loaves of bread, walk up to the ark, and deposit them inside. He realized that the man was unaware of his presence, and he heard him utter fervent prayers to God to accept this offering and enjoy the challahs. The rabbi listened in astonishment. Finally, he was unable to restrain himself any longer, and he burst out in fury. "Stop, you fool! How can you think that our God eats and drinks? It's a terrible sin to ascribe human or any physical qualities to God Almighty. Why, it's probably the shamash who eats your bread." At that moment, the caretaker entered the shul, blithely expecting to pick up his challahs as usual. He was a bit startled to see the rabbi and another man standing there. The rabbi immediately confronted him. "Tell this man why you came here now and who has been taking the challahs he's been bringing every week." The caretaker freely admitted that he'd taken the challahs, but he couldn't understand why the rabbi was so agitated. Why was he yelling at this other man? As the rabbi continued his rebuke, the man burst into tears. Not only had he not done a mitzvah as he had thought, it seemed he was guilty now of a great sin. He apologized to the rabbi for having misunderstood the lesson about the showbread and begged him for forgiveness as he left the shul in shame and despair. Shortly thereafter, a messenger from the Holy Ari, Rabbi Isaac Luria, who was one of the great mystics of the day, this messenger strode into the shul and approached the rabbi. In the name of his master, the messenger told the rabbi to go home, to say goodbye to his family, and to prepare himself, because by the designated time for his sermon the next day, his soul would already have departed to its eternal rest. Thus it had been announced, the messenger assured him, from heaven. Well, the rabbi couldn't believe what he'd just heard, so he went directly to the Ari and asked why he had been called to God. The great rabbi responded, "Such things are not for us to know. But I heard that it might be because you halted God's pleasure, the likes of which he hasn't enjoyed since the day the holy temple was destroyed. After all, with all the gifts that God has given, would a little challah every once in a while hurt so much?" I am not Jewish. I was reared in a Christian church a long, long time ago. Since my family didn't celebrate Hanukkah back then, when I was little, I had to learn about it when I got older. And I was immediately taken by the hopeful retelling of ancient history and by the telling of God's gift of light in the temple. At some point, I began to attend seders in synagogues, in homes, in Unitarian Universalist churches, and found out you can learn a lot doing that. Some of the foods I saw were okay: latkes, applesauce, matzah. I can always pass up the gefilte fish. But it was actually the spoken ritual that I loved. For that, you do need horseradish, parsley, hard-boiled egg, matzah, salt water. And I learned there about the dreidel, that little four-sided top with Hebrew letters on the sides, Nun, Gimel, Hey, and Shin, which are an acronym for the Hebrew phrase Nes Gadol Hayasham, meaning a great miracle happened there, referring to the place where the miracle of the Hanukkah light happened. I have seen that last letter on a dreidel changed from Shin to Po, which shifts the acronym and thus the meaning to a great miracle happened here, which might seem more appropriate to liberal religionists like ourselves. And I don't know how appropriate it is, but I have been known to nosh on Hanukkah geld as well, those little chocolate coins that I think are supposed to be for kids. But, you know. Well, attending seders could be a little overwhelming because, at least for me, there is so much to learn there. But I always left lifted up by the sense of community, by the sense of shared history, by the sense of deep, deep tradition. I have to admit I haven't been to a Seder lately, and I have to say that those hopeful stories I loved have a slightly different gloss these days after recent scholarship and the difficult current history we're still living through. But even with those difficulties, there does come a time every year to retell the old stories yet again, because that's what we do. It's what helps us with our understanding, helps us become more holistic. Now, some of you may already have your menorah out of storage and you're ready to light it on Thursday evening this week. Maybe you'll put your menorah up in your front window so your neighbors can see and remember the gift of light. You may be ready in your family to give or receive gifts each of the 8 nights of the celebration. You may even gather around your own dinner table to read the ancient story of the light restored in the temple. If you're not an observant Jew, if you are simply a Unitarian Universalist who observes from afar, you probably remember the story of Hanukkah to be much like the version that our DRE, Kathy Avery, told us a few moments ago. I imagine you already know that there are myriad ways to interpret that story and its meaning. So, what is the gift in the story? You could say that the gift was that the Jews stood up for themselves and drove out a cruel ruler. You could say that the gift was that some of the Jews took the mantle of leadership seriously and stepped forward to save the whole community. You could say that the gift was that Yahweh intervened to save the people once again. Or you could say simply that the gift was that light was provided in the temple for a few extra nights, signifying once again the community's covenant with the holy. In Jewish tradition, interpretation of these old stories goes on through a process known as midrash, trying to tempt and squeeze and wrestle the meaning out of old tales. Rabbis and teachers and scholars have been doing midrash for millennia because each generation must interpret the ancient narratives for themselves. Meaning must shift, mustn't it, as times change, as people grow, as contexts evolve and morph into something new. So it is today that we try again to use these old tales to figure out who we are and what we're about. Now, I said I was once all in on Hanukkah, but that I have been reconsidering it a little bit. One of the reasons I'm rethinking Hanukkah is that the story behind the holiday is so much about war and violence. It's easy to tell our kids that we light the candles to remember the gift of light. That seems fine. It's a little harder to rationalize, at least for me, that it's a good thing to explain to them that the heroes of the story are all the warriors with the most prowess at dispatching their opponents. It's one thing for them to play all those shoot-'em-up video games, but watching adults ritually celebrate war? I don't know. But then as I say that, I realize that one of my most favorite biblical characters of all time is Judith. Without doubt, the greatest heroine of the early period, who used what you might call her feminine wiles to get into the tent of the opposing general, Holofernes, and after getting him good and drunk, deftly removing his head with a hunting knife. Judith certainly displays audacity and courage and commitment. I'm not sure about using her carving act as the center of an otherwise warm and cuddly PG-rated holiday. But that's only one of my rubs with the Hanukkah holiday. Something that disturbs me even more is the recent interpretation from scholars that says the holiday commemorates not the victory over the foreign oppressor Antiochus IV. You say Antiochus, I say Antiochus. That's not what this holiday commemorates at all. It celebrates instead the victory of, I want to be careful how I put this, the conservative Jews over the liberal Jews. In this more historically accurate way of telling the story, they say, the Maccabees were from the hinterlands, rural conservatives, if you will, who went on a rampage against the Hellenized Jews of the cities. One of the things the rural conservatives were upset with the urban liberals about was the city dwellers' willingness to accept non-Jews, Gentiles, others, as neighbors. They were upset about their willingness to live with and among many different people with many different traditions. So you hear that? The Hellenized Jews of the city were being accused of being welcoming. They were being inclusive of people who didn't believe like they did. They were willing to accept people of other cultures and faiths as neighbors. They were, in short, exactly what we aspire to be on our best days. Now, trying to better understand the point of view of the more rural, more conservative Jews. We might describe the Hellenized Jews of the cities as turncoats who had abandoned the ways of their fathers and mothers. We might describe them as heretics who were willing to defile the ways of the one true Judaism. We might say they were traitors to the faith who were assimilating with the ways of the evil outside world. Since they were no longer real Jews, they had to be driven from the temple. They had to be excluded from the community. Basically, those liberals really had no right to exist at all. This makes the traditional Hanukkah celebration a touch difficult for me. I'd have a hard time lighting a menorah and saying prayers and giving gifts in honor of some marauding paramilitary militia outfit. On the contrary, I'd want to stop them in their tracks by any means necessary. So, on the one hand, I believe we need to honor the old ways and the traditions of our elders. On the other hand, and at the same time, I believe we need to seek historical accuracy. On the other hand, well, there is no other hand. Regardless, I believe that we need to tell our stories in ways that resonate in the present and in ways that tell us something about how to approach the future and in ways that tell us how to act so that the world is a better place for all, not just for the few. Whether we're talking about conservative or liberal Jews, rural or urban Americans, or old or young, or rich or poor, or black or white, or gay or straight, whatever your favorite way of dividing people around you up. And going back to the reading from a few minutes ago about the man who gave the challah to God, about the shamash who delivered it to the poor, and about the rabbi who was stuck in the rule book. It's hard to know what it is the universe demands of us at any given time. It does seem to me, however, that however we get challah to the poor is the right thing to do at any time. As for that rabbi, though, the one who rebuked the man for thinking that God would accept his gift of challah, maybe it's exactly when we are the most certain of the rules everybody else ought to follow that we have stepped the farthest over the line. In the end, it's all just a story. Whatever the story was way back when, whether it was about challah or Hanukkah, we have a story to tell here and now. Because of that, I will light a menorah, and I will say prayers, and I will give gifts to honor the victory of the forces of light over the forces of darkness. And I will believe, yet again, that light is a gift worthy of our gratitude. so may it be. Our hymn is People Look East. I think we sing all the verses.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able. Trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today. Love, the guest is on the way. Furrows be glad, though earth is bare. One more seed is planted there. Give them your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and sing today. Love, the rose is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today. Love, the star is on the way.
And now a Hanukkah benediction that begins in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by his commandments and has commanded us to kindle the lights of Hanukkah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who wrought miracles for our fathers in days of old at this season. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive and has preserved us and enabled us to reach this time. Go in peace, walk softly on your paths, and may the light of love shine on you all your days.